In a world where power decides everything, one ordinary life shatters into destiny. Betrayal, blood, and broken dreams carve the path of a hero who never asked to be one. But when fate opens its cruel hands, will he rise or be swallowed by the darkness? This is not just a story. This is a journey of survival, of strength, and of becoming something greater than human. Prepare yourself, because once you step into this world, there is no turning back. Welcome to the story that will change everything. Solo Leveling Season 1, Episode 11, A Knight Who Defends an Empty Throne. The forest was quiet, too quiet. The wind carried with it the cool scent of moss and damp earth, yet for Sung Jinwoo, that silence felt heavy, pressing against his chest like a weight. He stood at the edge of a clearing, his hand hovering near the familiar glow of the blue screen hovering before his eyes. A new quest, a new challenge. Accept? He stared at the window for a long time, his reflection faint in its light. This wasn't like the others. The moment he read the restrictions, no potions, no full recovery, no escape until completion, his heart skipped. It was almost cruel, as if the system wanted to strip him bare and test him with nothing but his will. He clenched his fists. How many times had he almost died? How many times had the system cornered him until he felt like nothing more than prey? Yet each time he'd come back stronger. Each time he'd crawled through the mud and blood and pain until standing up again felt like defying death itself. Jinwoo exhaled slowly. His breath fogged against the cool night. Let's do this. The moment he pressed accept, reality cracked open. A violet gate, jagged and humming with an unnatural storm of lightning, tore through the clearing. It pulsed as though alive, daring him to step inside. For a moment, he remembered. He hadn't completed his daily quest. The penalty, he knew all too well what that meant. But then he shook his head. Later. This comes first. He stepped through. The air inside was thick and suffocating. Darkness stretched endlessly, interrupted only by dim torches fixed on the ancient stone walls. Each flicker of flame cast jagged shadows that looked like reaching hands. It was too quiet, and then came the sound. Clang, clang, clang. Metal against stone. Steady, deliberate. Jinwoo's grip tightened on Kasaka's venom fang. His instincts screamed danger, yet his pulse raced with a strange excitement. Each echoing step grew louder until the figure emerged, a knight in blackened armor, sword gleaming as though freshly sharpened. No words, no hesitation. The knight raised its blade. Jinwoo struck first, his dagger flashing like a serpent. Clang! Sparks flew. His blade had bounced off as though he'd struck solid steel. His eyes widened. The knight moved with terrifying speed, a blur of steel cut through the air. Jinwoo ducked, rolling aside as stone shattered where he'd stood moments before. Fast! He slashed again, this time using his skill, Fatal Strike. The dagger whistled, piercing straight toward the chest plate. It connected. But instead of the satisfying give of flesh, there was only a deafening metallic clang. No damage. The knight didn't even flinch. Jinwoo's heart pounded. His skill, his critical hit, was useless. For a moment, panic clawed at him. What if I can't hurt it? What if this is where it ends? But then he remembered Kasaka, the serpent he'd once faced barehanded. He remembered his fear back then, his doubt, and the moment he had torn through it anyway. Then, I'll do the same here. He sidestepped a slash, muscles burning as the knight's sword barely missed his head. With a roar, Jinwoo dropped his dagger, lunging with his bare hands. He grabbed the knight's arms, twisted, and with a strength that shocked even himself, ripped through the armor. Metal shrieked. The knight's body split with a sickening crunch. Smoke poured from its shattered form. Its helmet clattered to the stone floor. Silence returned. Level up. Jinwoo staggered back, chest heaving, his arms trembled. He glanced at his hand, half expecting it to be broken from the force, but it was steady, alive. I did it. His voice cracked with disbelief, but the system didn't give him time to celebrate. Clang, clang, clang. Another knight stepped from the shadows, and behind it, two more. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. He raised his dagger once more. So this is how it's going to be. Far away, in the warmth of a lavish dining hall, another battle was unfolding. Yoo Jinho sat stiffly, his fork untouched, the food on his plate cold. The grand chandelier above bathed everything in golden light, yet to him, the room felt suffocating. At the head of the table, Yoo Myung-han, his father, the man who carried the weight of Yoojin construction, swirled his wine glass with ease. He looked like a man who commanded empires. Jinho felt like nothing more than a child in his shadow. A knock at the door. Yoo Jinsung, his older brother, entered with calm confidence, a smile that seemed to mock without trying. "It's been too long, little brother." Jinho forced a nod. His throat was dry. Their father's deep voice broke the tension. "You've arrived just in time." The meal resumed, yet every word spoken felt like a dagger aimed at Jinho. The conversation turned, inevitably, to guilds, to the future, to S-rank hunters they couldn't recruit, to failures they couldn't ignore. And then, to him, Jinho. His father's eyes locked onto him. "I hear you've been playing around in dungeons, C-rank ones." The words were spoken lightly, but Jinho felt the accusation buried within. He lowered his gaze. His father's presence was suffocating, his brother's smirk unbearable, yet deep within he clung to one truth, one secret that gave him strength. "I have him. I have Sung Jinwoo." No matter what his family thought, no matter how powerless he seemed, he had already chosen his path. And Jinwoo would make sure he walked it without fear. In the dungeon, fear had become Jinwoo's only companion. The clash of steel rang again and again. Knights, assassins, archers, mages, each came with their own cruel tactics. A dagger from the shadows, an arrow that hissed past his ear, a fireball that scorched the stone walls. Every muscle burned. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His lungs begged for air. Yet he fought. His blade carved through armored knights. His fists crushed assassins lurking in the dark. He moved with instinct, recalling every battle he had ever survived. The temple, the insect dungeon, the endless near deaths. Each strike was a memory. Each dodge was a scream of defiance. But fatigue was growing. Even his body had limits. When a mage's fireball nearly engulfed him, he rolled aside, gasping. His mind screamed, "I need more. I need to think, to adapt." For the first time, he regretted ignoring his intellect stat. Strategy mattered here more than brute strength. And yet, he couldn't stop. He had to keep going. He cut down the mage with one final desperate strike. Silence followed, broken only by his own ragged breathing. The corridor was littered with broken armor and scorched stone. He leaned against the wall, chest heaving, and then something glimmered on the ground. A chest plate. B rank. Jinwoo stared at it, then let out a shaky laugh. So not everything's hopeless. Piece by piece, he equipped the armor he'd collected. For the first time, he was covered head to toe. And when he looked down, he saw nothing. The armor was invisible. Jinwoo smiled faintly. The exhaustion didn't vanish, but for the first time since stepping into the dungeon, he felt ready. He pushed open the massive doors ahead and froze. There, before an empty throne, stood a knight unlike any he had faced. His armor burned crimson, his name hovering above him like a curse. Igris the Bloodred. The air trembled with his presence. Each breath Jinwoo took felt heavy, like the knight's very existence crushed his lungs. The knight raised his sword. Jinwoo's heart pounded in his ears. The memory of the double dungeon flashed before his eyes, the towering statues, the merciless rules, the godlike power. This knight was that same terror, reborn, and now it was waiting for him. The throne room loomed like a tomb. Every step Jinwoo took echoed across the cold marble floor, swallowed by the vast emptiness. Stone pillars lined the chamber, cracked and broken as though crushed beneath an unimaginable force. And at the center, the throne, tall, imposing, yet empty. But what drew Jinwoo's eyes, what made his breath catch, was the knight standing guard before it. A figure clad in crimson armor, its edges glowing faintly as if soaked in blood. The name hovered above his head, glowing like fire. Knight Commander Igris the Bloodred. Jinwoo's hand trembled against his dagger. This presence, it was the same suffocating weight he'd felt in the Kartanon Temple. The statues that had reduced hunters to dust, the godlike beings that looked down at mortals like insects. This night was no different. The silence was broken by a sound like thunder. Igris raised his sword, and in that instant the air itself seemed to bow. Jinwoo barely had time to react. The knight moved, a blur of red steel. His blade sliced through the air with such force that the wind alone shattered stone pillars behind Jinwoo. Jinwoo dashed to the side, heart hammering. Too fast, he struck back, Kasaka's venom fang flashing forward. The dagger met the crimson plate. Clang! Sparks scattered uselessly. Not even a scratch. Damn it! Igris's gauntlet swung. Jinwoo raised his arm to block, and the impact hurled him across the room. He crashed into the ground, his chest screaming with pain. But before he could recover, the knight was already there. blinding speed, a crimson blur. Jinwoo barely raised his blade before the massive sword came down. The ground erupted, cracks spreading like lightning beneath him. The pressure was unbearable. Every swing carried the weight of a mountain. He staggered up, but his dagger, it wasn't enough. It couldn't cut, couldn't even pierce. And then something strange. Igris paused. Slowly he lowered his sword and released it. The great weapon vanished with a heavy clang against the floor. Jinwoo's eyes widened. The knight raised his fists. "What?" Jinwoo whispered, stunned. The knight had chosen to fight him barehanded, to meet him on equal ground, to test him as a warrior, not prey. It was almost respect, but that respect carried no mercy. The punches came like a storm. Jinwoo blocked, twisted, ducked, but each strike rattled his bones, forcing him back, breaking his guard bit by bit. The armor he'd collected saved him from death more than once. Yet even with it, his body screamed. "I can't keep this up." He dashed to the side, using his skill to skill, dash, striking at Igris's flank. But the knight spun, faster than Jinwoo thought possible, and caught him mid-strike. With one motion, Igris hurled him into the air. Jinwoo crashed against the throne itself, stones splintering beneath him. His lungs seized, his vision blurred. He slumped against the throne's armrest, broken and trembling. Igris approached slowly, each step echoing like a countdown to death. The knight extended his hand, and his greatsword flew back into his grasp as if the weapon itself obeyed his will. The blade rose high, its shadow fell over Jinwoo, and for a moment Jinwoo almost gave in. His chest heaved, his arms refused to move. He was nothing before this overwhelming force. But then, anger. No, defiance. No, not like this, not again. He thought of his mother still asleep in that hospital bed, of Gina, smiling, waiting for him, of Jinho, who placed his fragile dreams on Jinwoo's shoulders. He thought of every moment he had been treated as the weakest. The E rank, the hunter who could do nothing but hide. His fingers twitched. His hands shot up. With a roar that tore his throat raw, Jinwoo caught the descending blade in his bare hand. Steel burned against his skin, cutting deep, blood streaming down his wrist. But he didn't let go. "I'm not finished!" The knight paused. Jinwoo summoned his strength, his weapon, Kasaka's venom fang, flying into his grip. With a desperate thrust, he drove it forward, stabbing into Igris's eye. The crimson visor cracked, the knight staggered, but Jinwoo didn't stop. He recalled the dagger, summoned it again, and rammed it into Igris's throat. Again, and again, until finally, the crimson giant stilled. A moment of silence. Then, the massive body collapsed, crashing into the stone with a thunderous echo. Smoke rose from the crimson armor as the glow of his name vanished. Jinwoo dropped to his knees, chest heaving, his hands slick with blood. He had won. Barely. But he had won. A blue window appeared before his eyes. Enemy defeated, Knight Commander Igris the Bloodred. Jinwoo blinked through the haze of pain, reading the rewards. The S-rank helmet Igris had worn. A rune stone for a skill called Ruler's Hand. A teleportation stone for the next stage. His lips trembled with a bitter laugh. Next? Stage? The system wasn't done. Elsewhere, far from the dungeon's suffocating air, the Hunters Association bustled. Yoo Jinho entered Chairman Go Gunhee's office, his usual stoic expression faltering for a brief moment. He respected this man, this aged hunter who still carried the weight of the nation on his shoulders. "Chairman." Go raised his gaze from the papers before him, his voice calm but heavy with exhaustion. "How are preparations?" Jinho hesitated, then bowed. Choi Jong-In and his team are already en route to Jeju Island. Go's lips curved faintly. Still chasing the impossible, isn't he? Perhaps, but someone must. The two men shared a moment of silence. They both knew the truth. Jeju Island had become a wound upon their nation, festering year after year, every failed raid a scar. And yet, there was no choice but to face it again. Go sighed, leaning back. "I only pray we last long enough to see a new generation rise." Back in the throne room, Jinwoo's body refused to move. Every muscle screamed in agony. His wounds burned, his breath came shallow, but still, he forced himself up. The system wasn't done. The teleportation stone glimmered in his palm, a chance to continue, a chance to climb higher. But then, he faltered. The stone slipped from his bloody fingers. It clattered to the floor, and in that instant, shadows shifted. Knights emerged from every side. Their eyes glowed faintly beneath their helmets, their weapons raised in silent hunger. Jinwoo cursed, stumbling back. His vision swam. He had nothing left. No strength, no stamina, only will. Not yet. I can't end here. But the knights closed in, forming a circle of steel. Their footsteps thundered, drowning the sound of his heartbeat. The trial wasn't over. The throne room trembled with the march of endless enemies. And Sung Jinwoo, battered and broken, stood once more. His blade in hand, his eyes burning with defiance, even against an army, even against fate itself. End of episode 11.